discontent with Washington. Joining me now are two incumbent lawmakers who are typically more candid about what's going on than many of their colleagues. From Washington, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. And here in New York, Congressman Jim Cooper of Tennessee. My own congressman, I should add. Senator, I want to start with you. You've been quoted saying that your worst day as governor is better than your best day as a senator. Why is that?
Well, John, I think if you base it on accomplishments, getting something done, and I think you and I spoke about this before, I was able to basically get up every morning excited as governor, knowing that I could change somebody's life, make it better for them in West Virginia, my beautiful state that I love so much, and go to bed at night feeling fulfilled that I'd done something productive. I don't get that same feeling right now, but I'm very hopeful. Now, this is still the place, if you're going to change the world, being in Congress and Washington, D.C. is the place to do it. We just got to get our act together and start acting like Americans and quit worrying about being Democrats and Republicans.
Congressman, you have served in Congress under 5 administrations, from 1982 with a little break in there. Which was the most effective, and what was it about that era that was missing now?
There's never a golden age, John, but there might have been a bronze age.
We'll take it.
The Tip O'Neill era, in retrospect, was a pretty harmonious time because Tip could sit down with President Ronald Reagan and get things done after hours. That's almost no longer true today. There's such acrimony. And we're behaving more like a parliament than a Congress, because so many of my colleagues vote 99% of the time with their political party position. Joe Manchin and I are two of the few who sometimes break with our party, because no party has a monopoly on wisdom. I'm a proud Democrat, but we need to make sure we're doing the right thing for the country. That's our main job.
What is it that, is it simply the personalities, that you don't have a speaker and a president, or what are the other factors?
Personalities are part of it, but also some larger forces. We've gotten so darn good at gerrymandering with computers that these districts are pre-selected to send the most partisan people in America to Washington. Then once they get to Washington, they don't even know each other anymore because nobody lives in Washington. An hour after the last vote, we're all flying back home to be with the folks back home. And then there are bigger factors, too. The Internet has changed politics tremendously. It used to be when we had 3 news channels, we had a common set of facts on which to operate from. Today, whether you're watching Fox or MSNBC, you can see a completely different picture of America. So it's very hard for people to get along in that environment.
The 2 things that haven't changed and probably never will change is human nature and common sense. And that's what we're missing so much, is the human contact, human interactions, common sense. When you go home, and I've always said this, if I can go home to West Virginia and explain why I'm supporting something or why I'm looking at something differently, if I can explain it, I can vote for it, if it makes sense. If it doesn't, I can't. I don't care whether it's a hard party line vote that they want me to take, and whether it be Democrat or whatever it may be. And the thing that I've said is that basically we're in an environment, Jim and I are in an environment now, and Jim can basically give you the experience of history here, being through 5 administrations. I've only been here from 1 administration. I don't know if, but what 5 would have done to me. But anyway, anyway, John, with that being said, I made a pledge. I have made a pledge to myself and to every West Virginian that I will not go out and campaign against a sitting colleague. So if you expect me to go out and beat up my colleagues who are Republicans and are running, to go down in their states and get involved in their races, I won't do it.
Senator, you came to national prominence in a significant way after the tragedy at Newtown in Connecticut. As a Democrat from West Virginia, someone who in a campaign ad had shot the cap-and-trade bill, coming out for some common-sense gun legislation. Can you tell us what that experience taught you, for good or for ill, about what's happening?
Well, I pretty much knew, you know, all these personal issues. I mean, you know, I come from a gun culture. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I was a proud member. I shoot, and I love to go hunting and shooting and have friends who I've done with all my life. And with that, I always felt that, you know, that common sense would prevail. And if I wanted to be treated as a law-abiding gun owner, then don't look at me just because you don't have guns or come from a gun culture that I've committed a crime because I want to own a gun. Maybe it's a type of gun you don't want me to own for whatever reason, But then I would look at you and say, well, why do you have that car there that has 140 on the speedometer when the speed limit's only 70? You have a right to buy what you want to buy in America, as long as you abide by the laws. That's how I should be looked upon, as a law-abiding gun owner. So with that, I thought came some responsibility. We never put any restrictions on personal transactions. Jim and I know each other. I want to sell Jim my gun or give him my gun, I can do it. Don't need to have a background check. We have a personal relationship. Law-abiding gun owner won't sell it to a stranger, to a criminal, to someone who's mentally unstable, or even give it to an unresponsible family member. With all of that, John, don't you think it makes sense that if I don't know you and I go to a commercial transaction, such as a gun show, or I'm on the internet exchanging, trading guns, that at least I ought to have a background check or have a background check on you so I know who I'm selling it to? To me, that made sense. And if I want to be treated as a law-abiding gun owner with all the rights and the Second Amendment, then I should be at least show some common sense about getting a background check when I don't know somebody.
But you did this in a bipartisan way, and it didn't work.
Well, when you say it didn't work, we got, you know, we had 60, I think it was almost 67 votes on cloture. And then they says, oh my goodness, this thing's going to pass. And then all the wheels start turning, and Jim will tell you how that happens. And people got scared and got threatened and this and that. It takes an awful lot of work. I've been asked the question, do you wish you hadn't done it? Well, you know, if that's the case, then why'd you send me here? Why don't you just send somebody here that basically will do exactly what the path of least resistance would be, and just go along to get along. I knew if I couldn't bring some expertise to a piece of legislation I knew an awful lot about, then what was my purpose? So, no, I don't. But it did take an awful lot of work. And sure, politically, you can say, oh, you take maybe a little bit of a hit. I truly believe if you work at it hard enough, people will respond, people will get involved, and people are looking at me now. You know what the whole problem was, John, on that? Is that when I talked to them, I said, did you read the bill? And they said no. So we broke the bill down very simply, a one-pager. And after they read it and looked at it and said, Joe, we like your bill. I said, thank you. We just don't trust government. That's why we're not for it.
Yeah.
They didn't trust government stopping right there. And I said, guys, this is a constitutional amendment. It has to go back through this process. And I can assure you we're not going to do anything different than what the bill says. We just don't trust government.
That ring true?
Well, Joe was describing the sausage-making process that the legislative process has always been. It's not pretty to look at. You just hope the sausage tastes good once you're done. But also, as we move into this polarization, we're finding that some people want pork, some people want beef, and they don't want to mix up the two. So it's very difficult to get a compromise. Joe was ideally suited on the gun issue to achieve a compromise. He tried hard. He didn't succeed because it's very hard for one man or even a group of senators to beat a group like the National Rifle Association. Some issues are very difficult to solve, and it takes time. But there's so much more that Congress could be doing. We should be humiliated that we're at 7% in the polls. We should be doing everything possible to do better. Joe and I support a bill called No Budget, No Pay, which would have eliminated congressional pay if we didn't pass a budget.
Right.
Unfortunately, we only were able to pass that for 1 year. Our Republican friends took over the idea, but limited it to 1 year. And now it's expired. So this year there really won't be budgets for the United States of America. So that's an idea of, there are new approaches to solving this, like incentive pay, penalty pay, also gamifying it so that, for example, if we got to pick the other party's committee members, that might change the calculus within the Congress, because so many committees today are captured. Now, to an outsider, people who don't know the legislative process, this is all way complicated. It sounds like Robert's Rules of Order or something like that. But this is the system the founders gave us.
Right.
And in the 4th of July week, we should be obligated to make it work. And when we have funerals like Senator Howard Baker's, who is one of the giants of our time, to be sure a short giant, but still,
he was, that's right.
He knew how to get along, and he will go down in history as one of the greatest. And today's leaders are not measuring up to that standard. So if we just followed the examples of the recent past, we could do better. Joe's idea about not campaigning against colleagues would be helpful. Now, you can't just have unilateral disarmament. They'd have to agree to the same thing. Right. But some people say when Bill Frist first attacked Tom Daschle, that was one of the first times the Senate really got off the rails and started personally attacking each other. And that makes comedy very hard.
You know, when you talk to people in the White House about these issues, they bring up something that Jim mentioned a while ago, which is just the total